It's been a very eventful 24 hours when Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was killed in a joint military strike carried out by the United States and by Israel. In this video, we're going to take a look at what has happened, why the United States and Israel decided to launch this attack, how Iran has responded, the fallout for the other countries in the Gulf, and what is likely to happen next. So remember, like, share, and subscribe. We're going to take a look only at information that we've been able to confirm from reliable sources. So this is what has happened so far. The United States and Israel launched attacks on Iran, targeting what they described as military and strategic infrastructure. The Iranian state confirmed that Ayatollah Khamenei was killed in those strikes, although I must point out Donald Trump confirmed it hours before the Iranian state confirmed it. We also understand Iran's chief of army staff, defense minister, and senior Revolutionary Guard officials were also killed in those strikes. Al Jazeera has reported that Israeli strikes hit civilian infrastructure, including schools. One particular school for primary school for children, for girls, was hit, reported over 100 deaths. And there was a lot of concern about how that happened. Iran responded within the next few hours, launching missiles and drones at Israel, but also at various Gulf states that were housing US military bases. So explosions were reported across the UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia. Much of the airspace had to be closed for the last day, and it's likely to continue for now. The question to ask right now is, why did the United States decide to attack at all? Let me give you a quick recap. Remember that in January, there were protests nationwide in Iran. So that government has already been weakened by a war with Israel that it just came out of. Plus, it has local protests quite widespread across the country. It's battling a very severe economic crisis. They have mishandled the economy as well. The crackdown of those protests left thousands dead, and Trump promised that he is locked and loaded to attack Iran. But at the same time, US and Iran were also in negotiations about their nuclear abilities. The last round of talks, apparently, that took place in Switzerland was being mediated by Oman, by their foreign minister, in which, from what we understand, Iran had agreed to never ever stockpile enriched uranium. The Omani foreign minister has confirmed he was a mediator. He said that there was significant process and the peace deal was within reach. And these are really important words from the person who was mediating those talks, that apparently Iran had agreed to never stockpile enriched uranium, something that they have never agreed to in the last several decades. Although the next thing that happened was US President Trump justified the strikes on several grounds. He said the objective was to prevent Iran from acquiring a nuclear weapon. Even though the mediators have said that they agreed not to stockpile, he said that Trump said Iran had attempted to rebuild nuclear capabilities after those previous strikes in which Trump claimed to have destroyed their nuclear capabilities. The second reason he gave was the missile program. So the nuclear program, the missile program, Trump said Tehran was developing long-range missiles capable of threatening Europe and potentially the United States, but he has not released any sort of evidence supporting these claims. He also framed the strikes as necessary to eliminate threats to the US troops and allies, referencing support to Hezbollah and Hamas and other regional proxies. Trump also publicly called on the Iranian people to rise up and take back their government. So obviously all of this language suggests that what he's really going for is a regime change. And in a completely new twist, while speaking at the United Nations, the representative of the United States accused Iran of attempting to assassinate Donald Trump. So these are all the various reasons that America has offered for why they went ahead and attacked Iran in this manner. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has consistently described Iran as Israel's most dangerous adversary. Netanyahu said Iran must never be allowed to obtain a nuclear weapon, and his earlier confrontations with Hezbollah and developments in Syria, analysts warned that Israel might resume direct strikes to Iran if conditions allow. So how has Iran responded to both of these parties? It retaliated with an unprecedented wave of strikes across the Middle East, targeting several nearby Arab countries that host US military bases as well as Israel. In Israel, one person was killed and 121 others were injured, according to the country's national service. But The thing that caused us a lot of concern back home were blasts that were reported in Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates, in Jordan, in Qatar, in Bahrain, as well as Saudi Arabia. Now, Saudi Arabia has vowed to take all necessary measures now to defend itself. Very dramatic footage we saw of people fleeing a smoke filled passageway of Dubai International Airport. 4 staff were injured there. Fairmont Hotel at the Palm Jumeirah, which is known for luxury, known for where people go to experience extreme luxury. It was difficult to watch those photographs of smoke and a hole being punched into the exterior wall. One person was killed and several others injured in the Zayed International Airport in Abu Dhabi in UAE when drone strikes caused some damage, as well as the Kuwait International Airport. One person reportedly killed with falling debris in Abu Dhabi. Qatar and Jordan intercepted missiles targeting their countries as well. Bahrain's interior minister said 3 buildings in the country were damaged. The US hasn't suffered any sort of combat related casualties because of this operation, from what we understand. But very obviously, Iran has managed to alienate the Arab countries in the Gulf, and we'll come back to that. What did happen, of course, air traffic came to a grinding halt, and the Gulf, specifically Dubai and Abu Dhabi, tend to be very important transits for people doing long haul flights from the west to the east. Many, many flights were cancelled or diverted. British Airways, Virgin Atlantic, among the carriers who grounded their flights in and out of Dubai International and Al Maktoum International. The disruption had a knockoff effect. There were delays all over the world. Remember, Dubai is the busiest transit hub in the world. Emirates had to suspend all of its operations in and out of Dubai. They stay suspended as we speak. British Airways cancelled all services to Tel Aviv and Bahrain as well. Dubai, I think, experienced one of its worst days in decades. Fresh blasts were heard across the city through the night, and people sort of were listening from their balconies and from their homes as to what was happening. Local authorities say 4 people were injured in that fire in the Palm Jumeirah. Dubai's main airport was also damaged, and attacks fractured the Emirates' long-held image of being a sort of haven in the Middle East for people who want to do business, for people who want to holiday, people who want to experience the Middle East way of life. Dubai was that promise that it seemed like, even though it was geographically, it was seated in the middle of that conflict area, Dubai itself has never experienced what it experienced last night. And that unshakable idea of security and safety perhaps has been shaken a little bit. Passengers had to be rushed to evacuate Dubai International Airport last night after that that one incident. But here's the question, really, what we've not been able to establish, on my team at least, is we cannot tell you conclusively whether Iran was actually targeting infrastructure in Dubai. So were these airports actual targets? The Burj Al Arab or the Burj Khalifa, were these buildings targets of attacks? Or was this falling debris from missiles that were targeted at the American base and were falling in other parts of these cities? We've not been able to establish that, and when we do, we'll bring you that information. Other than that, there was damage to the shipping industry. The Strait of Hormuz, which is managed by Iran's Revolutionary Guard, shut yesterday. 20% of all the oil that moves in the world comes through that very narrow strait. And we understand that all of that shipping came to a grinding halt, which means that the price of crude oil is likely to move up in the markets across the world. The next question to ask is, how long is this going to continue? Is it going to continue for a while? Well, based on what Trump has said and what Iran has said, none of these guys look like they're anywhere near stepping back. So let me tell you what has been said. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian has declared that avenging the killing of the supreme leader is a legitimate duty and right of the Islamic Republic. Following those strikes, he further described the killing as a declaration of war against all Muslims, particularly Shiite Muslims everywhere in the world, which is odd because he has also managed to alienate all of the Gulf Arab countries at the same time, and in my opinion, push them into the waiting open arms of Donald Trump and Israel. Now, Trump, on the other hand, has threatened Iran with, and I'm quoting here, force that has never been seen before if the strikes continue. Trump said if Iran intended to strike hard later in the day, Washington would respond with a force that has never been seen before. Now, on one hand, we must take into account the fact that Donald Trump likes to speak in superlatives all the time. Everything is the biggest you have ever seen. But at the same time, we've seen that he doesn't hesitate. And so everybody's holding their breath to see who's going to blink first. Um, let's take a second to see how this will impact India. Obviously, the GCC countries, the Gulf countries, Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE, they're together India's largest trading partner bloc, but also our diaspora that lives there. The number of Indians, the number of family members we all have living in the Gulf, India is deeply concerned, all of us are, with those developments and with the safety of our people in the Gulf. Our government has apparently spoken with counterparts in UAE and asked for safety of citizens in the region, which has a 10 million, strong Indian diaspora. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar has spoken also with his Iranian and Israeli counterparts and expressed India's deep concern and encouraged dialogue. Jaishankar has also spoken with UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, and Bahrain and asked for cooperation for well-being of the Indian community. There are, of course, the people who live there and those who were there on holiday and those who were just simply passing through, who have all been stranded now, either in the airport or outside the airport, and we're looking for some clarity on who's going to look after them. I did see some videos last night about the fact that the people, that the country and the airlines were taking care of the people who were stranded. But of course, this is anecdotal and it's not a sweeping statement. With US and Israel reportedly looking to participate in a regime change in Iran, India has to walk a diplomatic tightrope. Here's another diplomatic tightrope for India because Iran is a very key regional partner for us. One that New Delhi has not given up on, even though Donald Trump has put a lot of pressure on us. In Jan this year, in fact, India joined China, Pakistan, and 4 other countries in voting against the United Nations Human Rights Council resolution to crack down on protests in Iran. So we've kept again a window open with Iran. According to Indian authorities, it is in India's interest to maintain a functional relationship with Iran, not least because of the very strategic Chabahar port in Iran that we use regularly. It allows us to bypass Pakistan and Afghanistan, and bypass Pakistan and access Afghanistan and Central Asia, which is important for us from a trade point of view. So this is everything that has happened so far. But in conclusion, how long is this going to continue for? There are some points as we wind up we must take a look at. One, take a look at Donald Trump. By starting this, or by escalating this situation and launching a massive joint attack on Iran, he hopes that he has inflicted enough damage on the Islamic Republic to actually result in a regime fall. But as we did some research yesterday, the Islamic Republic of Iran has a very solid plan for continuity and succession for exactly this reason. So they have a interim committee that steps in. They have chosen an interim leader already, and another supreme leader will be elected as soon as possible. So is this going to result in a regime change? We don't really know. Trump did not outline the threat that he said Iran has. There's no detailed plan of what comes next for Iran, even if they succeed in this regime change. But although at the same time he has acknowledged a significant risk to US troops in the region. Remember when Trump contested this election, this second term election, he said very clearly he doesn't believe in regime change wars. He is not going to wind up walking his country and his people into another war for another regime change. He actually blamed previous governments for not being good negotiators and saying that the reason why they have, sort of gone into this regime change war is because they've not clearly been able to negotiate themselves out of it. And now this completely flies in the face of everything that he has promised. In fact, there were polls that said that most of the Americans did not want to be part of a war with Iran. So how is he going to solve for that problem? So in fact, polling consistently showed that Americans are deeply opposed to intervening in Iran, and if there are significant casualties on the US side, then Trump is going to have to clear that up domestically as well. Egypt's president has warned that the Middle East could slide into chaos as the conflict involving US, Israel, and Iran entered its second day. And he's right, it is going to slide into chaos because it very quickly went from Iran and Israel in that region to involving the larger region when the Gulf states were involved. And they've all turned around and saying, we reserve the right to respond to the fullest capacity. What will that actually mean? Now, Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain have reported intercepting incoming attacks into their territories. Qatar's defense ministry has said the Qatar Air Force and Air Defense intercepted missiles. This is the same statement that has come from the UAE. Bahrain has said the country has intercepted a wave of missiles that came in their direction as well. So this is obviously now a regional conflict. It is no longer a conflict between two or three countries. But I want to point out here, for a minute, we've talked about what it means for India, we've talked about what it means for the region, but what does this mean for the people of Iran who were protesting this very government in January? And I want to give you some perspective of what the US's history is like in this neighborhood. The US has a very long and a complicated and quite frankly, a very bad track record when it comes to regime change interventions in the Middle East. I'll give you an example. 2003, they invaded Iraq, you'll remember, under George Bush Jr. And in 2011, there was an intervention in Libya that actually led to the fall of Muhammad Gaddafi. There was Syria's civil war, and then, of course, Afghanistan. And we've seen what happened. Iraq has descended into sectarian violence and years of insurgency. Libya has militia rule and they're fighting with each other. They're competing governments. Syria, devastating proxy war. Extremist groups have flourished. Afghanistan, 2 decades of war, and now the Taliban has taken over, and human rights, especially for women and girls, is horrible in Afghanistan. These precedents will matter greatly for the people of Iran as it stands today. So on one hand, it is absolutely true that Iranians have long criticized this government. They have repressed the people. They have mismanaged the economy. The restrictions that they have on women's rights and their treatment of their own people and their crushing of dissent, and the fact that some of these women have been killed for protesting is very good reason to want this regime out. But the uncertainty of what might come next is even more frightening at this point. So the sudden regime collapse, if it does happen, what will it lead to if there is a power vacuum? That is one side. So for the people of Israel, yes, this government was not good for them. They want this government out. They want better human rights. Women want equality. But is that what is going to come from America's action? That's difficult to tell. And also, I want to point out here that the people of Iran are getting very little say in what is actually happening. And that, for a champion of democracy like America, we need to really question, why aren't the people of Iran being given a say in what's going to happen? He keeps saying that, oh, you should take control of your country. What does that really mean? Under these conditions, are they supposed to take control of their country? Iran, on the other hand, had missile strikes to Saudi Arabia. There were explosions that were reported over Riyadh. Bahrain, Qatar, UAE, this might have strategically backfired. So rather than uniting the Gulf against this action by the United States, where a lot of the argument has been that they want the regime change so they can control the oil, like they did in Venezuela. Now they want to control the oil in Iran. Now that argument would have really brought the Gulf oil-producing countries together. But by attacking these countries, what they've done is pushed them further towards Washington and Israel, isolating Tehran even more in that neighborhood. For Israel, which has long viewed Iran as an existential threat, this moment actually represents a culmination of years of effort to convince Washington to actually step in decisively in this manner. So will they be the only way that this sort of a conflict can be resolved if there is any dialogue. The mediators, including Oman, who have historically facilitated back-channel talks between Washington and Tehran, have signaled that nuclear negotiations were making progress and there was a framework that was within reach, but right now dialogue seems visibly off the table. What happens next will depend on whether cool heads will actually prevail and which of these three sides really wants to blink and stop and have a conversation, because there doesn't seem to be a cool head between the three of them. it'll be very interesting to see how this is going to play out. But what we do know for now, the trajectory is uncertain. This is not something that's going to be resolved in a day. The entire neighborhood is now, involved. Britain, like it always does, has gotten involved on America's side. Canada, whose prime minister very recently made a very emotional and compelling speech about standing up against bullies, at this point has actually spoken for America. So there are many, many things at play at this point, and it deserves obviously very close monitoring to find out how this is going to play out. But for the time being, we do know, we do understand, at least from the Gulf, from UAE, from our family members who are there, that the sound of the explosion seemed to have stopped for now. Things have gone quiet. Hopefully, that will continue, and there will be no injuries, loss of life, or loss of infrastructure. Leave me a comment in the comment section what your response is to what has happened so far.